now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Simon Canning. I'm the chair of the Hydrographic Society in Scotland, and I'd like to welcome you all to this, our first joint event between Hydrographic Society in Scotland and Norwegian Offshore Survey and Positioning Forum. Nice long names there. You can see why we always like to shorten them to the THSiS and NOSP. But there we go. So you can see I'm going to take this opportunity to firstly thank Celina and NOSP for organising this this joint event, and then I'm going to take the opportunity to also quickly remind all our Hydrographic Society in Scotland members who are in the audience about the Emerging Talent Award that we launched in February now. So we've got details through email, and I've just realised I haven't put a contact on there. But don't forget, it's going to be running throughout 2020, and we'd like as many people to take part as possible. What we will do is we'll put that up on our LinkedIn page with contact information about how to enter. So that is enough from me. I'd just firstly like to thank everybody for joining. I'd like to thank the speakers this evening, and again Celina and NOSP for organising the event. And with that, I'll hand you over to Celina from NOSP.
Thanks, Simon. This is really exciting for us to be able to try to do a joint event for the first time with the Hydrographic Society of Scotland. We have wanted to do live streaming and we wanted to do live events for a long time, and we needed really this push of a global pandemic to get us to do it, I think. But we're making the best out of it. We're hoping that everybody is appreciative of the efforts that we're trying to make here to keep NOSP running and to keep the THSiS events on track through these difficult and challenging times. And as Simon says, thank you so much to our guinea pig presenters who are willing to join us and give us a try with this, because it's new for everybody. So if we see some technical glitches, I'm sure you will be forgiving of those. So I just have a couple slides that I want to share. I want to say thank you to the NOSP board members. I'm Celina, chair. John should be joining us later, along with Martin, our treasurer, and the three of us are going to lead the annual general meeting at the conclusion of this evening's presentation. Otherwise, we have on our committee with us Elizabeth, Paul, Odd, and Stuart. The only reason it's possible to do this is because we have great sponsors, and I'm going to speak, of course, more about them as we get into the AGM later this evening. This is our fourth event of the year, the second one that we've done online. We were originally planning to take a break for the summer, so we probably will do so. The question then is, when we get back in the autumn, if we're able to do live events in person or if we need to continue online. That we don't have the answer to yet, but we'll get back to you about that. The dates anyway are here. Should we end up having live events, they will be distributed around Norway. Anybody who is watching the stream right now live and is not currently in the chat room, please join the chat room. That's where you're able to do mingling and see old and new colleagues and talk about what's happening. You go to our website and then you click on that link for chat room. Either you can use the desktop app, the mobile app, or you can access it through the browser. Please do that. It'd be great to see you there. And there's a separate text channel there specifically for questions to the presenters. So if you use that, that's what I'll be using in order to facilitate and field questions from you to the presenters that are talking this evening. So use that actively. It'd be great to see you there. That's really all I have. We are so lucky as to have Matt joining us I asked him and he said he was halfway between London and Birmingham, I think, somewhere anyway, in the very middle of England, he told me. So I am going to add Matt in and welcome him to the stage. Hi, Matt.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Celina.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on to talk a little bit.
I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks so much for joining us. I will pop up your screen and let you get going.
Okay, so thank you. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's...
Sorry,
Hello?
that's the wrong screen. You need to share the other screen.
Oh, okay, yeah, beg your pardon. This is one of those technical hitches then,
One
isn't
of the
it?
technical glitches we talked about. Everybody is so forgiving, as you can see.
Yeah, I'll just stop sharing a minute then and reshare.
Look at that. We have 48 live viewers right now on YouTube.
Oh, crikey.
No pressure. And a lot of people in the chat room. I'm so glad to have so many people joining us today.
How's that looking?
Good. I think you're all good now. Perfect. Best of luck.
Okay, let's get cracking then. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Matt Cowing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my experiences becoming a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, which I successfully accomplished in November last year. So it's a kind of personal account of my journey through the process of qualification. It's my own personal views and not those of the RICS. So the background story to myself is, as I said, last year I became a member of the RICS, and this was 21 years after I graduated from university, so quite a long path I took. I was aware of the RICS when I was a student up at Newcastle, but really didn't do too much towards the RICS until 2018. So it's a long and meandering path, and hopefully I might be able to give some insight into why I eventually went towards the RICS, and it might actually be useful to some people listening. So a bit more about why the long trek. So my degree was surveying and mapping science with geography, which was accredited by the RICS at the time. It was one of their recognised degree programs. But at the time, the offshore industry was booming, so I was grabbed by Cahill Survey and straight into the world of offshore work, which, as I'm sure many of you will understand, is a long, long way from any kind of royal institution, with leather-bound chairs and carpeted hallways and suits and briefcases. So it's probably not surprising that the RICS didn't really stay on my radar for long at that time. I also didn't really experience during my early sort of 10 years of my career that chartered surveyors and RICS surveyors were really sought after or required in the offshore survey and positioning industry. It wasn't something that cropped up frequently, although I was aware of some colleagues that had RICS membership. It was by no means the majority. I also have worked most of my career as a freelancer, so I didn't have anyone really sort of pushing me or mentoring me or any kind of framework to sort of develop, which was maybe another reason I didn't really consider it. So in 2010, I met Gordon Johnson and Helen Atkinson at Oceanology one year, and I started talking to Gordon about RICS, and he was involved and suggested I look into it, which I did. And again, at that time, I didn't really feel like it matched my skills and offshore surveying, so I went away again. And maybe that was a mistake. Maybe I should have sought advice from others at the time. And perhaps you out there have done similar things, looked into something and decided it's not for you. But maybe it would have been better for me to take a second opinion at that time. So the direction I ended up going in, the growth of competency schemes throughout the industry through the 2010s sort of started alerting me to the fact that maybe sort of competency and qualifications other than degrees was going to be more sought after. I also have reached a point in my life where I'm 43 now, so I've been going through a period of looking back, looking forward, 20 years in, 20 years to go, 30 years to go, 40 years to go. Who knows how long we're going to be working for, but wondering what I was doing, what I could do in the future. Maybe I just wanted some letters after my name. I don't think so. Maybe when I was online selecting a quote for car insurance, I wanted to use that drop-down box to pick out chartered surveyor rather than just surveyor. I don't know. Maybe another reason I wanted a qualification. Definitely one of the reasons was giving myself and my family something to be proud of. That was a big part of it. Recognition and personal development, and the challenge was something else I was yearning for. And also, I think a sideline benefit is becoming a bit more employable in other industries if in the future myself or others look elsewhere for employment. Then the RICS qualification, holds some clout elsewhere as well. So again, I'm hoping some of this rings true with some people out there, because as an insight, you're not the only person that may be thinking of similar things or has thought of these things. So in 2018, or 2017, I chose a change of direction. I came out of the offshore surveying industry. I'd been working in Azerbaijan for a while and joined Geosite, which was a small survey company down in Hampshire, and Brian Gammett, who was a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. So I enjoyed working with Brian and started to learn about the RICS, how it applied to land surveying and property and boundary surveying. Started to see how RICS surveyors and companies with RICS regulation were operating and were in fact quite common in that part of the industry. So that started giving me the sort of motivation to do something about getting a sort of professional qualification, and I ended up kind of giving it a go, handing over my money, which was about £500 to kick things off. So it's not a cheap venture, and I made a start. A few things about the RICS. Well, it started loosely in 1792. A surveyors club was formed in London, which maybe has some parallels with NOSP in the way NOSP was started up in the last sort of 10 years or so. So, I'm wondering whether in 200 years' time, NOSP is the Royal Norwegian Forum. But anyway, in 1838, the first council was formed. So you can see the RICS has a lot of history to it, and it's still headquartered in London, where it was way back in those days. There's over 134,000 members, trainees and members all over the world, all nationalities. So they're by no means a British, UK-based organisation at all. There's a big international element to it. The royal element relates to the way their constitution and any changes in the constitution and the council, the bylaws, need to be ratified by the government. They also have a strong kind of purpose when you read their literature about the greater good for use of lands and space for people. That's one of their kind of values that they build into things, with a motto, "Es modus in rebus," which means there is measure in all things. So how do you go about it? Well, there are 22 pathways, 22 kind of strands within surveying, and hydrographic offshore surveying falls within geomatics. You won't be surprised to hear that. In with land surveying, geodesy, GIS, engineering surveying, other things, and I've listed on the slide here some other pathways. So I'm going to concentrate on geomatics, which is the pathway I took. So you choose your pathway. Then within the pathway, there are several prerequisites. I took the relevant experience and an accredited degree route. You could go down the route of 5 years relevant experience and a bachelor's degree of any discipline, or 10 years relevant experience without the degree. So I hope you can see kind of they have opened it to people of all kinds of backgrounds. You don't necessarily have to have a degree to be able to go through it. So it does give some sort of pathway through all. There is also an alternative associate membership, which is not a member, it's an associate member, which is slightly less involved, less pathways to choose from, less prerequisites, and not quite as onerous in getting the qualification, but it still means you're associated with RICS. So when you start, you join the Assessment of Professional Competence, the APC. So the first thing that I did was to establish a mentor, somebody who could mentor me through the process. It helps if they've got reasonably recent experience of going through the process themselves. And I used Brian Gammett at Geosite, and he had been through the process 3 or 4 years earlier. Then there's the competencies. I'll just ask Celina, how am I doing for time, Celina? If she's there. I can see it's 5 o'clock, so I can't be doing that bad. So there is a series of mandatory and core competencies, and each competency is defined at 3 levels of attainment. So level 1 being the basic knowledge and understanding of a particular competency. Level 2 is the practical application, so doing. And level 3 is giving advice, advising clients, using your technical knowledge and implementing it. So it's knowing, doing, and advising. There are the 3 kind of levels you get used to assessing your own competence at. Sorry, I've missed a slide there. Where are we? Yep, so the first mandatory competencies. I've detailed the mandatory competencies on the slide here. So we have to level 3, you take ethics, rules of conduct, and professionalism. So that's both knowing, doing, and advising. You know, there's a big focus through the process of ethics, conduct, and professionalism. And really, RICS tells you that they're focusing on those aspects more than anything else. They want to know that when you qualify, that you'll operate professionally, and that you won't bring the organisation into any kind of bad light or disrepute. You know, they're very keen on that side of it. Then there's the client care, communication, negotiation, health and safety to level 2, which is doing. And then the level 1 mandatory competencies are all about knowing. So a lot of these you'll know anyway from general day-to-day business. Some perhaps you won't. I certainly didn't know too much really about business planning, not much in detail about that. And some of the more sort of modern phrases, inclusive environments, diversity, you know, a lot of this stuff's about the built environment. So there's an aspect of learning about sort of property in the built environment. So you do get exposed to other things away from offshore surveying. But a lot of this can be found with CPD and reading up on things so that you have knowledge. The core competencies. So in this list here, we select 3 to level 3. So I've selected, shown in green, the competencies I chose. They have changed slightly since I came through, but they're more or less similar. So for engineering, surveying, geodesy, hydrographic surveying, measurement, surveying and mapping, and surveying of land and sea. So, you know, all probably ringing bells with a lot of you out there, perhaps remote sensing, GIS, use of the marine environment. I mean, there's lots of application here within offshore surveying. So level 3, these would be competences that you'd need to demonstrate up to the advising clients or advising senior members of your team levels. The next set of competencies, you can select 1 to level 3 and 2 to level 2 of any of these here. Or you can go back to the previous list and select any more competencies from there, so which is basically what I did. So you'll see that these competencies here, these technical competencies are, you know, not directly related per se to offshore surveying or that kind of industry. It's a bit more widespread, so you can choose to go elsewhere within the environment, you know, planning and development, things like that, if you so wish. And then they've also added an optional competency in, which means you can choose from anything from the over 110 core or optional competencies, which is really widespread. So the chartered engineering surveyor would need to do engineering surveying. The chartered hydrographic surveyor would need to do hydrographic surveying, and land surveying and mapping. So there are a couple of definites that one would need to do in order to get those titles. The timeline, well, I started in January 2018 and became chartered 23 months later. In that time, I worked on my CPD. You know, I hadn't really recorded any CPD before, so that was a new kind of activity for me to do. And also realised, you know, how long 5 hours of CPD took. well, obviously you'd say it takes 5 hours, but it seemed to take a lot longer than that. So during this time, I would do my CPD and think about, knowing the levels. I read, I advised, I briefed, and as a tip, I would get my mentor to sign them off as you go along, rather than leave it to the last minute, which is basically what I did, and it created a lot of work for myself and for my mentor to sign it off at the last minute. You can record your CPD online. The RSCS has a assessment resource center online where all the competencies are listed, and you can type in or copy and paste in your text. It's all text based, and then you can say, yes, I'm ready for that to be assessed, and then your mentor would go on and read what you've written and approve it or add comments or otherwise. So it's a relatively straightforward process. The CPD, you need to have done 40 hours in the 12 months before your submission. So 3 to 4 hours a month, 20 hours formal, which is classed as learning with a defined aim. So a training course or some online CPD on a course which has defined aims. The informal CPD would be more reading journals, applicable conference talk or something like that. But there's lots on this RSCS website for CPD. Some of it's free, some of it you need to pay for, but I would recommend using that as it's really well focused on what you kind of need to know. So yeah, once you come towards the end, there are 2 periods of the year to submit applications. I went for the August submission, and there is also a February submission. So you have 4,000 words of evidence towards meeting your competencies. It's all kind of short, snappy sentences about, I read this, I did that, I advised that. You've got to really cut down on the word use. It's very difficult, actually. There's lots of words you want to have in there to make it read well, which is what we're all used to doing in reports and emails, but you've really got to be quite brutal with your wording to get everything out. Then you have a case study, 3,000 words, which I used a hydrographic survey project in Antwerp that I project managed. So I presented that in about a 10-page kind of PDF with some drawings, and within that tried to draw out the competencies and the evidences that I've been talking about elsewhere to show that I really was applying it and advising. You need to give a passport photograph, a university degree certificate if applicable, an application form signed by 3 existing members, of which one is a fellow of the RSCS. So I used Brian Gallant and Ian Thompson. They signed me off, and one of the fellows was actually a guy that took a training day for the RSCS that I went on. He'd only met me for a day, and we corresponded on email, but he was willing to sign me off as a fellow. So it shows that the guys in the RSCS do seem very keen for you to pass and to become a member. I think they're obviously keen to keep numbers up. So everything is submitted as a PDF on the portal. Don't leave it to the last minute. Despite all the warnings, I still did, and I got into some trouble. Couldn't get my application in. Was fairly stressed late one evening, and then got an extension and managed to get it in just before midnight the next day. So it was some fun and games there. Where are we next? Yeah, so once you've submitted the application, you then wait about 2.5 months, and then you will get a date for a final assessment interview, which is an hour with a panel. I went down to Heathrow to the one of the hotels, the Park Inn, right by the tunnel as you go to Heathrow, and you have 10 minutes to present your case study. It's quite nerve-wracking. I haven't really had that many sit-down panel interviews or interviews in general in my career. So there was probably 25 others candidates in my kind of time slot, and we all lined up in this corridor in the Park Inn, and we were all told to knock on the doors exactly the same time. They'd stripped out the beds from all the hotel rooms, and they'd become makeshift interview rooms. So I looked down the corridor, and I remember everyone just knocking literally at the same time, and all the doors opened at the same time, and all went in. So it's all very slick. So you present your case study for 10 minutes. You then have 20 minutes of questioning on your case study from the panel with reference to all the competencies, and then 30 minutes of general questioning from them about any aspect of your application and your experience. But they're not too grisly, you know, they were, you know, polite, and you know, after the initial kind of nerves settled, it became, you know, reasonably informal kind of chat. You knew what they were after. It was just a matter of getting it out of your mouth. So my overall experience, just drawing to a close, they're keen for you to pass, that's for sure, the RICS, the people I came into contact. There's a certain way to present your application, the words you use, which is what I learnt on the training day. I went for the training day in Birmingham. That's one of my big tips, is to definitely go along. It costs about £150 for the day, but it's well worth it. The most of the focus is on professionalism and code of conduct. You know, they want to verify that you're going to, you know, follow the RICS values and not present a risk to them in your work. The technical skills were touched on in the final assessment, but not particularly in depth or not particularly frequently either. So definitely the technical skills were a secondary assessed. The CPD material on their website is very good, wide-ranging. Come at a cost, but I would recommend using them. And as I said, definitely the preparation day was the best thing I did. It was fun, and you know, you get to chat to others going through the same process as yourself. So looking back, there's my certificate, which came through the post. I was also invited to a graduation day, but it was fully booked by the time I got around to booking it. And now we're all confined to our neighbourhoods, so I haven't actually attended yet, but I will do, and I am proud to be part of RICS now. Feels as though I haven't fully realised the benefit, but now I'm a member, the potential's there, and I don't know what the future holds, but you know, who knows where it will take me. I've now got something more to show for my career. You know, I really recommend it to others that might be considering a professional qualification. And if anyone wants any more insight or advice, or ask me anything about my experience, and by all means get in touch. You can get me on LinkedIn or on my email address, mattcowing@hotmail.com. So hopefully I haven't put you all to sleep and you've got something out of it. Thanks for listening. Thanks to NOSP and Celina and the team for doing an excellent job and keeping everything going. And that's all from me. Over to you, Celina.
Thanks so much, Matt. We have a couple questions that came in actually to you. So that's good news.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing, first of all, your experiences and the path that you took in order to get to the accreditation that you have today, and congratulations. I certainly hope that that it leads to benefits for your career. I have a couple questions here. One, first of all, Simon would like to remind you that this is a CPD event with a smiley face.
Yeah, I'll certainly be putting it down.
So it's a reminder to you and to everybody else that that has the opportunity to make use of that. He also asks, what subject did you choose for critical analysis for your final assessment?
Well, my final assessment case study, which I suppose is what Simon's getting at, although that term wasn't really used in my pathway, was a hydrographic geophysical survey in the port of Antwerp, and it was quite a challenging survey. It was kind of shallow seismic in a port, so it was by far not a perfect job, and there was lots to learn and draw from. So that was something they were keen. You know, they didn't want you just presenting something that went 100% perfectly. It was about challenges you faced. We didn't really know what geodesy the client had presented the data to us, the field drawings initially. That was one challenge. You know, the safety side of things in the busy port with a streamer out the back, that was another challenge, and liaising with so yeah, it was a critical analysis of a difficult survey job in a difficult environment.
Interesting. All right. And there's one more question that came in from Per Novald, and he asks, about the 23 months that you use. Are you a superstar, or is that a normal amount of time to use, or
To be honest,
what the average would be?
It was probably not particularly fast, but I tried to do it 6 months quicker, but just couldn't get things together in time. And in hindsight, that was a ridiculous target. So I would think that would be, a decent length time to do it in. I think if you try and do it in a shorter time, well, if you've got some months free, then you can, of course. But no, I would think that would be on the shorter side. Because maybe with my career experience, I had a lot of things to draw on. It wasn't like I needed time to get those competencies. I could kind of just draw them out.
Understood.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thanks so much. And to those of you who are watching the stream, you can post your questions on the Discord app so that I can forward them on to the speakers for you. Thank you very much, Matt, for joining us today. I wish I could hand over personally a speaker gift to you, but you will have to receive it in the mail, I think, instead.
We'll do an online high five.
An online, there it is. Online high five. Thanks so much. Okay, I'm going to add Will in. Will is joining us, also from England. No.
Hello, you right?
Where are you joining us from?
Cornwall, but Cornwall, so yeah, England, but the southwest.
Southwest.
Yeah,
thanks very much for joining us. I like that you got your logo t-shirt on so that everybody knows who you work for.
It's the smartest I've been in about a month, so yeah.
Well, until they open the hairdressers again, we're all kind of stuck for whatever we've got. Will is going to talk a little bit about the employment market, outlook, what has been happening for employers and for employees and for freelancers, not least, and tell us a little bit about what we're going to do about negative oil prices, maybe. Does that sound right? Okay, I'll give you the stage. Thanks so much, Will. I think we've lost your sound. Will? Uh-oh, we've lost your sound. Oh no, second technical problem of the day. No. No sound, Will. Let's see. What are we going to do about that? Let's take a quick break from both of us on the screen. Still nothing, Will, I'm sorry. Oh no, what could have happened here? Let's see if we can't get Glenn back on to step in and adjust the rotation here a little bit. Glenn, we need you. Will says he's going to try logging on and off again, or off and on again. Okay, do that. We'll see if we can get Glenn in the meantime. Glenn, what do you say? Are you ready to join us? Glenn?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You're live. You ready to talk?
I'm live. Okay, I was just preparing the slide because initially it's a little bit ahead of time.
Is it all right if I toss you up here so that we don't lose a lot of momentum?
That's okay. Did you get my share screen?
I have it in just a minute. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to give Glenn a chance to jump in and take Will's place, and then we're going to see if Will's sound improves when he gets back again. Glenn is joining us from Norse Asset Solutions and is going to talk about sensor data in digitalization domains. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of describing it. And just before I kick off saying or mimicking anything, can you hear me fine?
I can hear you just fine. I hope it stays that way.
Okay, let's hope so. And I'm sure that will sort itself and he'll take over afterwards. So
Okay.
basic. Okay, do you want to say anything more, or should I go ahead, Celina? Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity, and I think it's a very good initiative by NOSP, and also how they've been able to accommodate people from the Scottish hydrographic side. I'll do a short kind of briefing about who we are, and then I'll try to tangent a little bit on the intention of the slides and our presentations. And the reason why I want to keep it short is because we work a little bit different than the traditional kind of NOS presentations. And the reason why I think it's of value is it's a little bit mindset, it's a little bit on culture. So, and also for everyone that I don't know that might be looking or listening in, I have a hydrographic background and I've been doing a lot of that, but I recently jumped ship from the oil and gas industry to do more the service solution providing element of things. So since this is a one-way monologue, I'll just move on to the next slide. So Norse Asset Solution is a Norwegian private-owned company. We're kind of started in 2017, and we have a little bit different niche approach to things. So kind of what we are trying to do is identify where there are a technology gap, or maybe where there are end users that haven't done the cultural change of thinking what is available of today's technologies and sensors and methods versus where today's existing procedures, routines, and kind of traditional data management works. So I've kind of kept the slide open for a while here, so to allow it, and we serve initially governments, military, and industrial clients. And throughout this presentation, I'll try to just briefly mention a little bit of it. Many of the informations and data we have, we're not allowed to share, mainly because we come on a critical level, which means that some of the asset conditions maybe not be ideal, or we come in such a way that we can't necessarily share the project. But we can share the principles of the sensors that we use, or the approach we use, or even the combined sensors that we use. So I think that's a little bit around the pudding sufficiently, but you'll kind of get a context of it as we go on. So yeah, so since we have this situation here with COVID and people are sitting working from home, I thought I would do a translation of a Norwegian comic, and just to kind of let you know a little bit on the aspect of the customers that approach us and the customers we're in dialogue with, of how they work. So we have frame contract with quite a few, and we also have long-term frame contracts with a few of the clients. And in the next slide, I'll show you those kind of clients. And we will show you the last 3 to 4 months clients and collaboration partners. So we won't go in depth of what and stuff like that, mainly because of the asset integrity is often stuff that's not supposed to be public. So many of the people that we collaborate with or do services or support for, they actually start similar to this comic thing. So I assume everybody read through this now, and the punchline is initially here that...
Glenn?
Yep.
We have a problem with your screen. Sorry, this is tip number 3. I think you're sharing the wrong screen, and I'm sorry that I just realized it.
Okay.
We can only see your PowerPoint slides right now. They're not in presentation mode.
Okay. Let me then...
I should have caught it before now.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I had a double open. Okay. Then I'll try again.
Then we can see your comic. Sorry about that.
Okay. So, okay. I have it open. Should I try this one? Can you see that? No?
Nope.
Okay.
If you go ahead and stop sharing your screen and then restart using the other window, maybe.
Okay, I'll do that. So I'll just need to close it. Because initially I only have one open. Okay, let's try that.
This is how everybody knows that we're really live.
Sorry?
This is how everybody knows that we're really live.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, you go ahead and bring it up again.
Yeah, and I'll just do the whole screen then. And hopefully that should be.
I'm not sure. I'm still just, there we go. Now it's the full screen. Looks good.
Okay, do you ever get to see slide number 2?
We did not. I didn't catch it until now. I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. So, okay, I'll just scroll back. So that was slide 1.
There you go. That's all good. All right.
Okay, so then we got slide 1, slide 2. Sorry about that. So I think I've already kind of spent a little bit of time on that. So basically, this is just the kind of thing saying it's around the pudding thing, but we work for everyone and we sign some kind of hefty non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements for, especially for the military and government, on some of the solutions we work on, and even for some oil and gas industry or private equity end users as well. So that was, I think I've spoken sufficiently about that one. So this was the comic then. Sorry about that. That kind of took the momentum on what I was going to say. So I hope everyone can read this so that I don't actually need to elaborate further on this one. But we often have people approaching us, it either being a project manager, project director, project engineer, or we have contractors that have a situation, something that has not panned out as they hoped, where there's a gap or there's an incident or an accident. And we come in there and we do some situation. But I'll show you the example so you don't need to be kind of wondering what sort of examples I'm talking about, because I have written permission to share the details coming later. But what we often see is they've always followed the same path, they've followed the same methodology, and they used routines, but there hasn't been necessarily room or time to recap to say the method we're doing today, has there been technology leaps or evolutions coming up that we can implement or improve for efficiency or cost or quality or even security with regards to the military and government side of things. So I thought this was a little bit funny, but I will not spend more time on this because I tried to explain it without it's been shown. So, okay, I see now on both things that this is updated. So we've been working a lot for both oil and gas, offshore, onshore, and abroad. I think that's the best way of saying it for some of the customers. So today I would like to say that oil and gas, most of the people that are listening in on this have a know-how of those use cases, and you can relate to your own background to the presentation we're going to say. One of the things that we have experienced is that we take a military or an operational approach to things that is a little bit slightly different than the oil and gas typically industry, and it's a method, and I will explain it as we proceed. But this was just a little bit kind of overview to see who we've been working with and for, and frame contracts is something that allow us to stay afloat even in these special times. We do equipment sale, we do research development, asset integrity management as a service and solution. We do risk-based inspection, 3D modeling, structural analysis, blah, blah, blah. It's all of these things here that you can read yourself, but the few things that we have done that is a little bit different is that we made some sensors. And for the infrastructure side, and one example is specifically for the military, but I can't say that, but you can understand as I explain the other scenario, which is the infrastructure. So we made a ground penetrating radar for concrete. There didn't exist anything for that purpose, for that detail, for that resolutions. So we went in and we made that one with the knowledge of that there's a lot of bridges, there's a lot of infrastructure made of this, where there will be a prolonged life cycle expectancy, because a design cycle of a bridge is typically 40 to 60 years, and then there's an annual inspection rate to it. However, that's with uncertainties being very high, and with these sensors, we could get that certainty of confidence, of quality, to allow that to be recertified and either prolonged maintenance, which reduced the cost. And that was also relevant for oil and gas. So today we do this offshore on what is called COND platforms. But it initially kicked off where we knew there was a big gap and onshore. And we think also this is relevant for hydro dams, and then for some military users, they use it for other stuff. Yeah, I can't say too much more on that one, but you can think about it yourself, what it will be used for that. We also work with something called bring your own device or bring your own data. Many of the visualization or analysis that we do is actually people coming where they have existing data. And what we see here, and that's kind of the whole essence of what we want to talk about today, is many people or many customers, they have a lot of data that is not aggregated sufficiently. So the data aggregations of existing data in form of, let's say, for oil and gas, a subsea video that could be digitized to structure for motion, making 3D models, we can enhance and aggregate this onwards. And this is some software that we have been able to derive from collaboration with military companies that have had this for other purposes. So, yeah, since it's a one-way monologue, it's very easy, I feel now, to get stuck on a slide. So my whole intention with regards to this presentation is that I would like to motivate everyone that's listening and the industry as a whole, because I left this industry about, let's say, 9 months ago as a contractor, and then is doing now this full-time. And what we see there is cost saving, and both with regards to the use cases we get requests to come in, and from being on the other side, both on oil and gas operators and engineering service providers, is if the companies that have assets, and then I'm talking from a platform to a bridge to a military facility to a base or a key, if everyone were able to get a better control of their own information, both being analog and, let's say, you digitized analog as you catalog it to it could be a GIS or other methods that you use. I think this was actually what Matt was saying a little bit with regards to the specialties, stuff like that. So there is a big gap with regards to available data, both in-house and from the service chain of manufacturers, subcontractors, engineering companies. And this is where I think there's a lot of potential to save money with regards to the interface and the value chain. And this is kind of like, now that prices go down, this is something for you or most people to think of how you can make it. So I've written a few points here rather than me reading up everything. I would like to focus on two things here. And the one thing is called be aware of the OODA loop, and I will explain a little bit on the OODA loop. And the reason for I focus on this is that we use it every day to the military and the special forces and special missions that we support with regards to way of thinking and way of behavior. And it's very transferable with easy mindset change to the oil and gas industry and engineering industry as well. So a OODA loop, that's something that I would like you to remember. And initially, all of these key points here is something that I hope people can think of after this presentation. And the second one is that I think a mindset needs to change with regards to data management and And data validity control needs to be capital management, because the better you control you have of everything, that's how you save money, and that's how you allow best asset management in the future. Yeah, so I put in a kind of funny slide here as well. It kind of to change the mindset a little bit on oil and gas and the military and all of that. So during the COVID thing, I was also isolated. I kind of ended up in a quarantine for some time, and it's the first time I got time to sort all my single socks, and I thought that could be a good analogy with regards to understanding here. So we as humans, we are very quick of taking a decision, which means that we often pair a problem to a solution. So you take one and then the other, which is the kind of scenario of you have one sock, left sock, right sock, and you pair it together. And the alternative you see on the slide to the right here is with a 4-sock thing. So initially you have 4 legs, you need 4 socks. And I'm not saying that we as people have 4 feet or anything, but we actually do by 2 hands and 2 feet. And I think if you look at that towards the OODA loop, and you do a self-critical review of how we are as people and how we work in an everyday thing, we are very routine-based. We tend to be going into a tradition and we just repeat over and over a cycle, which then is a negative thing. And it doesn't allow potential for improvement, enhancement, and the agile wording, and which is a key positive for many companies today. It doesn't actually work because we've already programmed people with regards to managing data, handling data in an old kind of rigid method. And the people that we've met in the digitalization teams, they normally think of what we're going to do today and then what is going to be improvement for tomorrow. And that's why I thought you have the 2 socks, the 2 feet. They don't think of what is old data, the analog data, or even the fairly new or digital data that needs to be linked to all of this. And that's where we spend a lot of time, a lot of money, and there's a lot of risk potential out there that we lose out on. And therefore, I think the OODA loop can be a toolkit for everyone to do, and that could break the tradition of how we're already doing it today. And I thought this was a funny slide. So for people that are not aware of the OODA loop, so the OODA means observe, orient, and decide, and act. And this is initially something you can Google. Everything is public information. With regards to the OODA loop principle for what we do for both the military, which is transferable to oil and gas industry and any industry, is that we need to think now and going into the future that we need to think differently on the domains as land, air, sea, and stuff like that. There's also the virtual and cognitive domains, and that's where we need to pre-program future work roles and capacities. And here there's a tick-off sign to the right explaining a little bit of the observe act, the orient act, and decide, and then you do the act part as a facilitation of future milestones where we look into AI and other automatic reporting aspects. And you can't do AI reporting unless you have all of those 4 phases, which I call OODA loop, or let's call it 4 feet, 4 socks. You need to cover all those phases. Yeah. So in our work every day, we work in something called CFISR, which is military based. It's the command, control, compute, or communication. And we have cyber. The intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance might not be directly relevant in the wording in the term. However, if you rephrase them, the intelligence is in situ data for oil and gas industry. Surveillance is the frequency management with regards to how often do you do the data acquisition versus expectation and calculations of condition-based control. The reconnaissance is when you actually go out and do a resurvey or you do a routine control. So these are the elements that is transferable back to the oil and gas, but this is something that I see and I think is relevant to bring over from what we are doing today that could initially save time and money for companies in the future. So I have a video here, but I don't want to spend time showing it. It just shows a fantastic zoom rate on a camera. I don't think it's relevant for the timing since I spent a lot of time. This is the example that I'm allowed to share. This is flare stack inspection. This is concrete bridge inspection. We did this here using normal electro-optical, which means RGB cameras, but we also did it with multispectral, hyperspectral. We did it with laser scanning with the normal land survey equipment. We did it with radar data, ground penetrating radar, and a concrete radar, as well as merging drone imagery, structure from motion, or photogrammetry. With these different models, we were able to merge everything into a data reporting package, which initially allowed the end user as a one-click access portal. The only thing that we would say that we thought was missing was as-built and design data. I'm coming back to that later, but that was just a scenario and showing some examples. Image-based camera, full scale, zoomed out, zoomed in. Things can be done from far distances. The different cameras that we're doing, you can do it by thermal, infrared, or multispectral. We even have hyperspectral zoom cameras. I'll show a little bit about that. This is a scenario showing radar, because radar data into concrete, this is actually showing a road where there are rebars and then different types of rebars and enhancement. And you can see there are also a sag, which means that this bridge should not be driven on by a certain load factor. We then came back with analysis stuff. This same thing can be done with regards to ice data, either it being drift ice offshore or onshore for snow avalanche. Yeah, here you see the merger of the data. We have 3D laser scanning data. You have laser scanning data, drone imagery, photogrammetry, merged with radar and flat surface control, different information. And then you have initially one model thing where you can zoom in, digital select to go into it. So if you want to view it, or if you want to export it, if you want to look at imagery, they're all geotagged or merged together as a one model recording. Again, if we had, let's say, 2D drawings, if we had the as-built or the design from various times, so this is a bridge going back to the 52, very little data is available. And in that example, that can be transferable to an oil platform, to a quayside, to a base, to a production facility. Yeah. This is not as interesting with regards to for people that have geospatial background or spatial backgrounds. This is just different export formats that allow it to share. So initially we can take and manage any file formats. It's just a matter of that whoever is your data broker or whoever is your interface partner, they need to be aware of different formats. They have different resolutions or positive and negatives. And since this is a wide audience, I just need to say, consult your spatial advisor or geospatial advisor or survey team, and then you'll get your insight with regards to what is the best process. Sorry, I forgot to say one thing. Of course, the RGB mesh, that can also be relevant from a subsea aspect where we do, or someone can offer a structure from motion, and we can also do the bring your own data, and we can aggregate and do engineering analysis on it. Which is a cost saving versus acquiring new data. Same scenario, it's the different types of data, either it being IR, thermal, or one aspect that we can share but we can't show the data is that we've been doing fairly rapid data acquisition, conventional survey, but also facilitating, allowing the data to be on a portal. And this is was an oil and gas major that then used this data for an ROV hangar interface where there was a new contractor or tender process, and they were bidding to say who was going to do a fitting of a new ROV, open bid. And rather than sending out a team from each of the providers, going out, measuring, doing their own survey, we actually sent out two guys. We did 1 day survey, came back 2 days later, the oil operator, they had a database. They shared the link through the tender process. They saved a lot of time and energy with regards to interface engineering queries, because everything was facilitated ready for it. Yeah. And then we've done coastal erosion surveys, and then change management, change detection. We've done change detection to concrete crack inspection, both on roads and vertical structures, that being hydro dam or other. This is just an example saying that we have everything combined in one report. So in this, you can get a 3D point cloud, you can have a 2D compiled report with the relevant metadata and the links to the data sources. So one link, complete overview. We went offshore on a floating drilling rig where they were going to do a retrofit mechanical installations. We flew a drone, we did laser scanning, and then combined the data sets, and then this allowed fabrication of those modules to be installed onshore with millimeter accuracy, without the rig have to go out of commission. And they actually had a planned 3-week docking of the platform or the rig going to shore to do this. Now with the pre-fabrication and all of the data sharing as one interface, there was 17 different companies, because initially the project owner, the asset owner, certifying part, all of that, they could use and work on one data set and one portal thing. So we could give and link all of that documentation to them, and no matter where they were sitting. So it's a kind of similar learning as to what people are doing now with the COVID. People are working from home, and you need to be smart and work in a different way. This is just ground penetrating radar, initially showing how that can be done and identify various things. It could be buried pipelines, it could be other critical infrastructure. This is more to the detail level, showing the road coverage of concrete or other material, different types of rebars, bottom of slab or steel case on there, and then air voids. So this is something that they did not know, and this bridge was certified to be allowed use for another 12 years until next critical inspection level. But however, from this inspection, this bridge were closed. So yeah, so that's just showing insight of getting data, knowing data, and then they could then do destructive testing and destructive control of key points. And then they could see there was sag and impact damage to that, which was initially a risk reduction to public road. Yeah. Slightly over to the military side, we offer drones and payloads and data. We have frame contract work. We see the drone similar to an ROV. It's a taxi. It is a sensor carrier. That's all it is. It's a sensor carrier, and it's a data provider for it. It's the connectivity and the live stream and back tracking of the data that's showing the success factor of the drone, not initially the endurance, but the weather robustness is just showing that it's ready for operations. We have multiple payloads, multiple missions. We've designed and made some. Some are made by the company FLIR that we collaborate with. The reason why we make payloads is because there is a gap in the market, or there is a identified technology readiness where there hasn't been a commercial big entity coming in and offering the full suite. And I'll show you some example of that. And also these cameras here can look through fog, clouds, and mist. So where a normal camera can't see, these can look through it. I'm not going to sell products here, so it's just to give you insight what is available, and we transfer that from a military to an oil and gas or industrial aspect. So this is a good example. We have made a software 2020. There's a new regulations by this year. It's an international maritime organization saying that a vessel sailing both offshore, going into near shore or going to a quay, need to have a certain level of sulfur emission percentage. So we made a sulfur sniffer, and we also made a gas sniffer. So this can be multi-mode, And this is all the gases that we can sniff and detect. And we also made our radioactive sniffer that can be used. And for a scenario, this is where there's a change in everyday life. So previously, there had been nuclear traffic, nuclear-driven vessels, both commercial, oil and gas, cargo freighters. However, they've been going mainly on crude oil and different types of oil. So then the sulfur sniffer is relevant for checking the emission levels there. This is the authorities that use these sensors. The Radiac sensor is now in the future. So they're foreseeing the future, parallel to expecting a requirement to give additional safety to coast guards, police, firemen that is need or could be asked to go out and do a rescue operation onto these nuclear-driven vessels that sail along the Norwegian coastline. And there's also other missions these used for that I can't talk about, but if you look at the gases, you can understand that this is other missions that is for military and police. So. Yeah, this is another scenario. The radars that we started making, we were asked by the police and the military to come up to northern Norway. So it's kind of like 1 year and a month ago, as there was an avalanche that went and 4 people were caught. Unfortunately, and quite sad, it's everyone that was caught initially died from that accident. So they spent about 3 weeks, where you see on the right side, people going with search probes. The search probes, they come in 3 meters as a standard, and some search probes come in a long version, which is 5. Our radar and sensors that we made for snow avalanche, both for you can hand carry it, hand use it, or it could even be helicopter fitted or a drone fitted. We're working on that just now. We can penetrate to depths of 25 meters, it all depending on flight speed, weather conditions, and update rate and frequency management initially. So, and then this is a little bit, this was 160-year-old technology. The ground penetrating radar is 160-year-old technology. Same with drones, unmanned, remote controlled planes, 120 years technology, but nobody has bundled the two together. And that's the whole gesture with regards to, I think people need to think in the OODA loop and be self-critical of how can we do things differently. So
a couple-minute warning here.
1 minute warning. Okay, good. Then this is just showing how we were able to identify something, and of course, you know, it's a person that's caught them. So, so initially we take data. There's gross, and we make it fine by how we know the return radiation of people and human blood and stuff like that. We are making radars for mines to protect people. Yeah, and we can do this for other aspects. So I think I have that. I also put in a few more slides in case I didn't use the time or anything, but I'll keep it at that. And then the 15 additional slides, that's for another opportunity. So I guess questions, Celina, if any?
Great, thank you, Brett. Sorry to rush you at the end there. There's one question that came in. Again, it's from Simon. He asks if you have managed to mount a laser scanner onto the drone.
Yes, LiDAR is quite common today, actually. So there are different ones, and there's we have LiDAR for both fixed wing, which is a plane, and then we have the VTOL, which is the 4 quad or 8 copter. That's already in use, and there's a tender going on already by the local councils in Norway to do this as a service, because they have a previous background of doing annual photogrammetry or green laser mapping. So it's now moving from one big provider to local small companies providing it. We haven't actually said that it's not actually a profitable market as per today, because there's so many people on the bone and they actually do the work almost pro bono. So we haven't done it, but we offer the platforms and we offer the sensors, and we looked more into the indoor scanning of flying for search and rescue or into tunnels. Yeah, so, but it's available and it's existing. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us, Glenn. It was great. And for stepping in on short notice. We're going to give Will a second chance here and see what happens with his sound. And as I said to Matt, your virtual high five, and will receive a speaker gift in the mail. Thank you. All right, Will. Make us proud. No, I can see you laughing, but I can't hear you laughing.
You can't hear me laughing?
Yes, I can hear you. Excellent.
Yeah, good. We've fixed the tech issues. Yeah, thanks for stepping in, by the way, and sorry for the problems. Right, I will try and get it all set up, and I will kick back off where I was. So yeah, you've probably heard now. I'm Will, business manager at UTM, and when I'm not spending my time consulting on specialist crewing and employment strategy for leading service providers, primarily in hydrographic survey, ROV, inspection, AUV, and recently USV. I also specialise apparently in crashing international internet streams, so that's something else to add to my CV. When Celina asked if I'd be keen on sharing some of my thoughts with you all on the employment market and the outlook during COVID-19, from the comfort of, well, what was my front room and is now an office in Cornwall, I thought, yeah, I'd give it a shot. So it's been a roller coaster few weeks of work in the personnel sector. And whilst COVID-19 has disoriented short-term global employment markets, the longer-term outlook doesn't need to be pessimistic or look offshore. I'll aim to give you all a snapshot of the employment market as it stands in general. I'm not going to go in detail into any particular subsector. I'll share some of our experiences as a business, and I'll start to explore how we can all potentially use the current situation to our own advantages before things start to pick up and when curves are well and truly flattened. So one thing is for certain, once all of this is over, we're likely to emerge into a new normal of employment. How we respond individually, how we respond as businesses, and ultimately how the industry responds will shape what kind of normal this will be. So employment is a huge topic at the best of times, and the coronavirus has made it even bigger. The interesting thing to me is that everybody here listening, everybody here who I guess helped put this together, everybody in the market is qualified to comment on the current situation. So yeah, topics of conversation are changing so quickly, so we need to talk about them. I mean, nobody was talking about oil going below zero last week, and now everybody is, so things change day to day. I'd wager that everybody listening has their own strongly held ideas and lived experiences so far of work in the age of Corona. And so, because the broader discussion goes way beyond this webinar, I expect there'll be some conversations for us all to have in the coming weeks as the situation develops and as employment goalposts move. So the speakers today, as you've heard, are going to be logged into the Discord chat after our talks. So if any of you want to raise questions with me, please do. And if not, then my email is at the bottom of the, oh no, it's not. My email is wp@utmconsultants.com. You can drop me a line and we'll chat. So I've been taking it back a bit with freelance personnel, specifically in some form or other since 2013, which means that before 2020, I'd personally worked through a number of proverbial bumps in the road, I suppose, similar to what we're going through now. So from 2014 to 2016, there was the oil price plunge, 70% knocked off the price of oil between 2014 and 2016. That was problematic, that's an understatement. I worked through two major international public health crises, namely Ebola from 2015 and MERS in 2015 as well. For various reasons, they put obstacles in the way of the work that we were trying to do with regards to moving personnel to those regions and keep projects ticking over. And as you've seen from this live stream, potentially, if my camera's working, is that I've gone through and still maintain some crushingly awful hairstyles. The one I'm currently sporting is the mop. Since lockdown, it's become a firm favourite. Tips are available if you'd like to grow your own. Richard and Alex, UTM's owners, have been in the sector for longer than me, decades. And whilst we always seem to hear how the COVID-19 situation is unprecedented from the media, to a degree it is, they've made the point to me and to the rest of our team that COVID does bring a lot of separate employment challenges together that we've already faced as an industry, and collectively we've overcome. So understanding it not as something that's unprecedented and new and insurmountable, but as a combination of challenges that together we've overcome, makes it a much less daunting prospect when we start to hear that there are problems for employment, that there might be challenges going forwards. So at the beginning of the year, things were looking good. Market troubles, pandemics, dodgy haircuts, they were the furthest things from my mind. And if we looked at China, sure, they were dealing with the coronavirus, but like many of us, I wasn't overly concerned. And besides, based on our activity in the offshore personnel market, there were plenty of reasons to be optimistic, really, about our sector's employment outlook for the year. So why was this? Well, again, just through personal experience at UTM, January and February were unseasonably busy in international markets. An influx in project commitments for inspection, survey, and ROV personnel, freelancers primarily, offshore areas such as India, Australia, West Africa, and South America at the beginning of the year, more than made up for the slowing activity that we as a business had planned for the North Sea and European winter months. So much so, in fact, that looking at figures, we enjoyed our best January and best February on record. Secondly, tender and planning activity this year was high early in Q1 for the North Sea and for our European service providers. So alongside existing commitments, our key clients were furnishing us with detailed crew changes and schedules for the coming quarter, which we were already working on. Thirdly, there were whispers amongst the freelance community that regular rotations might start to make a return, and that day rates might start to recover towards pre-2015 levels if regular rotations did start to come into place. Now, this was January, now it's April, and the narrative is somewhat different. So what's become clear to me in the short space of time since the pandemic forced the vast majority of us into lockdown or social isolation is that COVID has made working life difficult, right? We do a cross-sector at UTM. We work with oil and gas, renewables, telecoms, oceanography, civil engineering, you name it. If it's offshore and it's within our areas of expertise with regard to the personnel, of course we'll do our best to help. At this very moment, vessels for us are still heading offshore, or in some cases staying offshore for very, very long hitches. Projects are continuing apace. Crew changes are still happening, and the demand for experienced specialist personnel is definitely still there in the market. It hasn't disappeared. At the same time, employment opportunities for offshore workers have reduced since capacity for international travel was reduced. Borders started to close, supply chains, which in our industry are international in nature, were forced to reposition themselves alongside sometimes unfamiliar local axes. And the result was that since March, when more stringent self-isolation, quarantine, and travel restriction measures came into place, some of our organisations that we worked with were forced to cancel crew changes, to postpone projects, and there were rumours of delayed investment or paused international tendering activity because of the logistical and operational uncertainty caused by COVID. In short, demand for personnel has taken a hit since February. Nobody expected a logistically challenging event of this magnitude to occur. And now that it has, some employees and freelancers waiting for the call to pack their bags and head offshore are unfortunately enduring a frustrating time. Further down the line, the signs do look more encouraging. And I believe, having spoken to our clients almost on a daily basis, that the appetite for work and the appetite for getting people back offshore and continuing projects is still there. The problem is that the prevailing conditions are forcing us to rapidly adapt our operations, and sometimes these adaptations are uncomfortable. For many of us, the key questions aren't, oh, do I need people? When am I going to start to get them offshore? It's how long will the lockdown last? When will travel and trade restrictions lift? When will a vaccine or widespread testing be available? These are bigger picture issues from a state level down. And once the powers that provide industry with useful answers start giving those answers to us, we can refocus our human capital plans for the year ahead and start to get on with things, really. Looking at a more non-industry specific but general recruitment overview, I thought it might be interesting for some of you, at least, to get a feel for how the recruitment industry itself has been affected by COVID-19 since from February to March. There was an interesting study released by KPMG and Rec UK, who are one of the industry bodies in the UK representing some recruitment and employment consultancies. Based on data submitted by about 400 UK-based recruitment and employment consultancies, some of which have got international scopes, between the 12th and the 25th of March 2020, outlooks for recruitment of new permanent and project-based personnel had been negatively impacted by coronavirus. This was realised by, in March, permanent placements for the recruitment industry in general falling by 21% on February figures. These were the steepest rates of decline since 2009, so the year after the financial crisis. Revenues for temporary, so freelance or self-employed placements were also hit quite hard with the combination of coronavirus lockdown and IR35, which is almost disappeared from view, but will definitely come back to be a topic next year. These changes led to a month-on-month reduction in billing of 15%. This is the most drastic reduction in these billing figures for about 11 years, again, around the same time of the financial crisis. So it paints a stark picture of how firms currently are looking to consolidate resources and protect operations by halting non-essential outbound work. Unsurprisingly, many recruitment consultancies signalled a corresponding surge in the availability of short-term or freelance personnel during March. Human capital re-entered the market during or following rounds of snap redundancy. The rate of expansion in these freelance personnel was the strongest recorded since July 2012. So there's a bit of a perfect storm brewing here. How did this affect job opportunities? So widespread uncertainty at the start of the lockdown postponed or cancelled many hiring pushes. That's a fact. This underpinned the first overall reduction in vacancies in the industry from February to March for over a decade. Normally, it goes up. If we look at the graph in the bottom left, and apologies, it's not positioned in the best way, green represents temporary placements made, or sorry, temporary vacancies in the market, and blue represents permanent opportunities for new members of staff. Now, there are many fluctuations, but at the beginning of the year, we saw a bit of a decline after an increase after the winter period. But as soon as we went from February to March, there is a massive drop-off in overall availability of work. The caveat from this report is that not all sectors have been negatively impacted by COVID. Temporary opportunities in healthcare, manual labour, etc., have increased massively, and demand for experienced staff in financial services or engineering have increased. And on our end, we've experienced similar trends from our clients in the market. There's been a massive increase in demand for offshore medics, for example, or for short notice engineering or technician personnel who are able to travel and undertake last-minute maintenance on important pieces of offshore equipment in workshops. Employer confidence has taken a dive as well since February ended and March started. Again, according to Rec UK, employer confidence, driven by the sentiment mainly from small and medium-sized businesses, so our size and larger, dropped by 22% between February and March. And this meant that businesses' confidence in making hiring and investment decisions fell by 21%. Keep in mind that these findings are from a UK report, but for countries that have responded to COVID in a similar way to the UK, I think we can all assume that these trends are going to be relatively similar across the entire market. So the impact of lockdown on workers is something that we need to talk about. How has the swift transition from business as usual into lockdown impacted us? Clearly, it's had an impact on businesses. Clearly, it's had an impact on recruitment consultancies. According to another study by Vox EU, which was based on data collected from around about 4,000 American and British workers between the 24th and 26th of March, COVID has had a massive impact on work opportunities. They've said that plain and simple. But researchers found that the negative impact on employment is set to continue until lockdown measures are eased and further coordinated efforts are put in place by governments. This hopefully will protect jobs and bolster new job creations after lockdown ends and economies start to recover. However, there has been an unequal impact on workers in the market. Not everybody is going to be affected in exactly the same way here. So take the ability to work from home or work remotely, for example. As offices, workshops and factories have closed their doors or downmanned in respect of social distancing, working from home is an essential part of our jobs now, if we're able to do it. The less able you are to complete a higher percentage of your critical job roles at home, the more likely you will be struggling in a socially distanced employment market. I personally feel lucky to be sat here at home working, and many office workers employed in the industry have been able to make similar adaptations in their working lives. But for many personnel in the offshore market, specifically those who go offshore to earn a living, and even more so for those who are regularly engaged in temporary projects, for example, earning money from home isn't an option. So looking at this chart, compared to the week before, say, stay-at-home orders were impacted, the week immediately afterwards, it was reported that basically individuals who weren't in more permanent or salaried types of employment experienced a drop in income. In the UK in particular, 75% of self-employed respondents reported a drop in income of about of a considerable amount compared to about 25% of salaried employees. And lastly, if we look at how annual earnings have kind of correlated to job losses week after COVID-19 caused lockdown, these two graphs paints a fairly stark picture. In the United States, which is on the left, the bottom third of earners were the most at risk of a COVID-19 induced redundancy. And worryingly, in the UK, those most at risk earned the very bottom bracket, about 10 grand a year. So the job security of high earners was far less impacted in the immediate aftermath of COVID-19. The reasons for such findings, I guess, are understandable. Higher income individuals are, in a difficult market, more likely perhaps to be involved in business critical leadership or high speciality functions, and therefore come with a long-term value proposition for their employer. But it doesn't make the apparent unequal way our employment system has reacted to COVID any easier for me, or I'm guessing you watching, to swallow. So the hardest hit from these two reports we can surmise will be those unable to work from home, or those unable to work remotely, younger or less experienced workers, lower job-related income, and those with unstable employment relationships, so self-employed, limited company, freelance workers, that kind of thing. They'll be hardest hit. The longer the lockdown continues, the more precarious their situation will become. But as mentioned right at the beginning of this talk, this kind of outlook doesn't necessarily need to be translated to the offshore industry. If we think about freelancers, yes, some of them are going to have relatively unstable working relationships with their consultancies or their end clients. They're not all going to be on regular rotations, and they might suffer some frustration waiting for work. But many of them are specialists in what they do. They earn a good amount of money, and the service they provide isn't really available elsewhere in the market. So they're quite a specialist commodity. When it comes to remote working as well, yes, if you work offshore, you can't really do that if you sat at home. But there have been some examples recently of more remote-based working creeping into the market. I read a couple of days ago, I think, last week, Sonodyne sent a USV 120 kilometres out on the coast of West Scotland to collect some data. And there's nobody on that vessel. It's gone out, it's completed a project. Everybody who's working on it is sat at home. That kind of thing, if it increases, will give freelance workers and other employees a good position in the market going forward. So at a high level, what's the prognosis then? Employment activity, security of employment and earnings have experienced real-time drops. Those occupying the most precarious work situations are going to be the hardest hit, but doesn't necessarily mean that people working offshore are going to be hugely affected. So now for one of the interesting bits, I guess, approaching one of the elephants in the room. At the beginning of this talk, again, we said the outlook didn't need to be that pessimistic, but oil and gas has obviously been the elephant in the room. The most obvious example of a challenging, volatile market that we have at the moment. WTI and Brent crude markets have been subject to huge price swings owing to reductions in the global consumption of oil and the price war between Russia and Saudi. The IEA's flagship oil market report for April 2020 warned that global demand for oil is expected to fall to a 30-year low this quarter, and OG UK's own business outlook for 2020 warns of a precarious employment outlook for non-essential personnel. Much has been made in the mainstream media about renewed challenges faced by energy companies operating in high-cost regions like the North Sea. And the image that I've put on this slide actually, it looks lovely, but actually it's 16 rigs sat idle in Cromarty Firth, and that was taken last week. According to the Financial Times, they said it's a barometer of the health of the North Sea oil and gas industry. And if you consider that 12 rigs were recorded on average at the same spot at the height of the North Sea oil and gas crisis in 2016, and that up to 4,000 jobs, I believe, have already been cut in the wake of the UK lockdown, it paints a dramatic picture of the market. Of course, the operators aren't the only kind of individuals or organisations who are making interventions to cut out non-essential activities and reduce capital and operational spending. Our view is that North Sea service providers, some of whom are our clients, faced with the prospect of stripped back project books ahead of the traditional spring and summer seasons, will reduce non-essential staff numbers accordingly. Faced with lower fleet utilisation, vessels will become idle for a longer period of time. Positive is that companies in the North Sea have been through this before, as mentioned previously, and are now better equipped than in 2015 to cope with the short-term impact of something like the coronavirus on their ability to safeguard jobs and welcome back workers when the markets allow. Once there's a clearer exit strategy, demand for oil will increase with the lifting of social mobility restrictions and increased energy consumption. Prices will rise accordingly. Programs of work originally scheduled for this year, if they're delayed, will come back online. Things will get better. In short, renewed opportunities will be created in the oil and gas market for employees. And in the short term, ongoing operations guarantee that the spot market will still require experienced specialists to execute essential tasks. Offshore workers are a highly skilled workforce and ultimately will always be in demand to a certain degree. For wind, supply chain disruptions and labour shortages initially impacted the construction schedules of projects. And in the hardest hit areas, project execution has been muted by about 2 to 3 months from what we've had conversations about with our partners in the industry. In emerging wind markets like China, investment in new construction has been slowed because of lower economic growth as well. But the good news is that some key countries within the supply chain are already starting a phased emergence from the lockdown. For example, Siemens investors restarting their Spanish plants. And as we approach the summer, which is a key maintenance period, obviously, because winds are dying down, the prospect of relaxed travel restrictions and increased virus testing capabilities means that opportunities for offshore workers, staff and freelancers are looking encouraging. So what's the view like from our business? Well, we're involved in many more market segments than merely oil and renewables. Although jobs have been lost from the industry over the past month, our experience, even if it's a difficult short-term market, is that competent, capable, experienced freelance specialists will remain in demand because of the value they bring to critical projects. Whilst the precise outlook for offshore employment prospects depends really where you look, the general consensus amongst our clients is that a job recovery is possible even before the lockdown ends. By midsummer, we now expect that offshore activity and with it requirements for freelance personnel and increased activity for people that are employed will be on the rise again. We're already, in fact, planning a pipeline of availability accordingly. And contrary to the negative prognosis overwhelmingly for oil and gas, a number of our key clients operating in the North Sea, IRM segments, for example, have managed to maintain activity on inspection campaigns manned by specialist 3-4U freelancers on rotation. And although we've worked through a month defined by project delays, reduced numbers of crew changes and spot market requests, this week has been characterised by the sort of detailed planning conversations I was having right back in January where, this wasn't a worry at all, this whole situation. In Survey, for example, many businesses that Alex and Richard have been in contact are hopeful that offshore activity will return to normal or at least to a higher level of activity by June. And once their offshore staff have been put back to work, they've assured us that they're going to ramp up on freelance utilisation. It's going to happen very, very quickly. Feasibly, we could go from famine to feast overnight with the spot market hotting up, rotations being booked in for the very best freelancers once more, and day rates recovering as demand for human capital increases in the summer. Before Q3, though, we are in the here and now, and there is no magic job creation spell if you're currently sat at home and not working. We know that. If project awards seem thin on the ground, and if you're not confirmed as an on-signer, or if the vessel that you're expecting to join for a crew change doesn't turn up, I can appreciate how disheartening it can be from the conversations I have every day with the people that we represent in the market. But here personally is where I think communication can be a key tool for securing more work. During difficult times, we should all be talking to each other as much as possible, and developing higher levels of trust in each other, from businesses that use consultancies like ours, from us to the guys that we actually work with on a daily basis. In a difficult market, we need to understand each other and know each other's capabilities to the nth degree, so that when we need work, we can trust each other to fulfill it. We shouldn't be afraid to leverage our network in creative ways in order to create a fertile environment for future employment to flourish. Many of us might be in self-isolation, but to a large degree, our awareness of the work we do for each other hasn't really been more interconnected. So take stock of your current difficulties. If you're struggling in the employment market, think about the problems you have. Think that every problem does create an opportunity, and try and pivot your approach. So, agencies, workers, employers, we can all work together in a more effective manner. We can all pivot, i.e. change our approach to maximise what we get from each other. So thinking about workers or contractors, what might be the main issues at the moment? Securing or maintaining work, being at the forefront of the queue when things pick up, maintaining your day rate, or even increasing it? How can these problems be addressed and solved now and for the future? Well, I think one thing that we all agree in internally as a company is that flexibility in this market is key. It is important. Knowing your limits and being able to discuss that with the people that are representing you is very important. We view competency references, appraisals, and detailed logbooks as incredibly valuable assets at the best of times. And right now, they're becoming even more important as clients' demands increase. If you have them, shout about them from the rooftops. They'll help you stand out from the crowd. Ensuring that training and skills are updated on your CV is important. It's surprising how many people who are brilliant that we talk to send us something which really doesn't represent how well they work offshore. And don't view employment consultancies as just farms for picking up work and then going offshore. Think of them as careers advisors, or think of them as people who can actually take what you've already got presented in the market and make it look even better. Research the agencies that you're working with, research the consultancies that you want to partner with, and find ones which actually are well suited to your skill set. It doesn't have to be us. There are loads and loads of us out there who specialize in different things. But in a tough market, I believe that the ability of your agency to sell you, to make you seem attractive to somebody, really comes into force. If we know you, and if you know our capabilities, then that's going to benefit you. See your agency as a partner, basically, not just a means to an end, and you will flourish when opportunities come through. As for clients, what are the main issues? How can they be solved for the future? There's, by the way, plenty more that I can talk about on the candidate looking for job side of things. It's a discussion that can go on forever, but with many of our clients currently, they are facing issues, as mentioned previously, with redundancies, for example, the prospect of skills attrition, incorporating remote activity into the business model. We mentioned the Sonodine project that was completed last week. There are many examples of innovative businesses that are incorporating remote-based technology into their day-to-day lives, more than just working at home, but meaning that offshore operations can continue as normal. Building supply chains. Supply chains have been massively impacted over the past few weeks, and many clients have had to start looking locally, as we've said. If that's going to happen again in the future, who are your local suppliers? Who can you start a dialogue with, and who can you create trust with, so that in the future, yes, you've got your long-term brilliant supporting partners from across the world to help you, but locally, if this happens again, then business will be able to carry on as normal because you pick up the phone and get the job done. Demonstrating the value of your service to end clients is going to be important, and selling quality to avoid a race to the bottom on price is going to be something that I'm sure a lot of you are thinking about. Coming back to the agency perspective, or to the personnel consultancy perspective, that's something that ultimately we can help with. If you're tendering for work, if you're bidding for work, speak to us about exactly what you want to achieve. If you want to demonstrate quality and demonstrate that you will be over and above the competition, then through the quality of personnel that you put on that project, that will help. Remote working isn't just about office staff. Remote working is about technology. And I think that the more companies start to consider this, they will innovate. And in the future, we will start to see, in any case, a lot more offshore workers being able to ply their trade at home. So in the original report, where we talked about the lack of ability to work from home, that won't be so, that won't impact us so much either. Just last, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So the very last thing is that, I guess, pivoting at UTM, we've had to pivot since the lockdown started. We've embraced new technology. Video meetings obviously are all the rage when they work, and we're doing some of the best networking that we've ever done. Our COVID-19 norm of remote working has increased FaceTime with key external stakeholders, and it's had an overall reduction on recruitment activity. An overall increase on on recruitment activity internally. We're taking what we're doing very seriously, and we're trying to improve our future prospects by making key learnings from what we're doing now. And remember, if you aren't currently working, there are still many, many jobs out there. You just need to know where to look. Thanks everybody for listening, and hopefully it didn't crash halfway through this time.
I don't think it did. I think it was great. Thanks very much, Will.
No worries, you're welcome.
I have two questions actually that have come in. One was if you have any examples of crossover options for offshore workers into other industries. You mentioned it in kind of briefly in passing, but do you have any suggestions for how one might start in that path?
offshore workers into other industries, as in exiting the offshore sector, or?
Maybe. I think it was more about where can we see employment opportunities for people who can no longer reach their job market, perhaps.
So I think that in the immediate present, it is a changing situation, as we said. Many jobs that would have been expected to happen, that people have been trying their trade in for years, aren't happening, and a lot of the reason for that is that there are operational challenges surrounding getting people into vessels or getting projects through. That's going to be the same in many different disciplines and many different job roles. So if what you're doing at the moment isn't resulting in immediate work, automatically trying to transition into something else just to find work straight away might not be the best answer. Like I said, it might be a case of picking up the phone, talking to the people that you're working with in the industry anyway, and trying to find out the reasons behind why maybe things aren't going so well at the moment, and, you know, working with, I guess, the people in the industry who you rely on and who work with you, seeing how they can help you. But there are certain disciplines, I suppose, where we've had individuals that have very quickly crossed over from one type of employment and one type of skill set to another. You know, we've had people who have been very experienced survey engineers who've started fruitful careers as AUV technicians recently. You know, we've got somebody offshore for 12 to 16. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot.
Well, thank you so much for taking time and sticking your neck out and being willing to make some prognoses about the future. I know that it's a dangerous time to do so when everything is constantly in change, and every day brings us new surprises. Your colleague Alex Meeks reminds us that UTM can help talk about IR 35 changes. This is a UK thing. So you get in touch with either Alex or Will in the Discord chat room if you want to talk more about that. Cool. Okay, thanks very much, Will. Virtual bye-bye. Maybe? Yeah, okay. See you next time. Okay, next up, I know we're behind schedule here, but it's interesting enough that I hope everybody is hanging along. We have a kind of a steady 70 to 80 people watching the live stream on YouTube, and almost 40 people in the chat room, which is absolutely phenomenal. So thank you guys very much for giving us your afternoon. If you're in Bergen, it's super sunny, and I don't know what you're doing inside watching us, but we appreciate it anyway. I'm going to bring Moya from PanGeo into the stream. Hi, Moya.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Good, thanks.
Good. And Moya has with her a colleague, Alison. Hi, Alison. Oh, Alison, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I had myself muted. Hello.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, PanGeo. We're going to start with Moya's screen, and when you get ready to switch over, you just give me a wave, and I will do that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let me know when you can see my screen. I don't have the luxury of having more than one monitor here in St. John's. Here where I am?
You look great.
Okay, perfect. Is my screen up?
Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, great. Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you, Celina, for the invitation. I'm both myself and Alison. Alison's our senior geophysicist with PanGeo Subsea. I'm the CEO and co-founder of PanGeo. We're based here in St. John's, Newfoundland, and certainly delighted to. One of the positive things about being on COVID is I get to see these magnificent sunsets from our cabin. Usually here in Newfoundland, we don't move out to our cabins until June. But with COVID-19, I decided to open up this cabin a little bit earlier, and I think you should be seeing. Hopefully, you're seeing a picture of what I saw last night on the sunset. Are we caught up on that?
Yes.
Okay, great. And also, you'll see a bit of the white stuff. You know, being in the most easterly point in an island in the middle of the North Atlantic, we still get some pretty significant weather streams coming from the north, and so we just had yet another dump of snow just on Sunday, so we had another 15 centimeters, but you can see it's slowly going away. So, we're delighted to be here. As I'd mentioned, one of the, the benefits of our technology and the company is that we've managed to balance our technologies across a number of the industries. So we're not oil and gas centric. We have a significant amount of work in the renewable energy sector. So today I want to give a little bit of an introduction on the company, but really focus on our technology being our sub-bottom imager. I want to share with you how we've really come from imaging boulders to cables to UXOs, both ferrous and non-ferrous UXOs. And then I'm going to pass the talking stick over to Alison, and she's going to walk us through some live 3D data to show you how we actually discuss how we acquire the data, how we interrogate it, and what we actually deliver to the final to our client at the end of the day. So as I mentioned, we're over here. You can barely see us, based on the East Coast. That's where the office was established back in 2006. We've got about over between our offices in St. John's and Aberdeen, we've got about 65, 70 people on staff as well as on contract for offshore work. We've been commercialized since 2011 with both our acoustic core and our sub-bottom imager, and we're really pleased to have some champions behind us within the marketplace, both in the oil and gas sector as well as the renewable energy sector. Today, like I said, I want to really focus on our sub-bottom imager. And as some of you folks are I'm sure familiar with it, it really is a tool that collects acoustic data, very high resolution acoustic subseabed data in a 3D volumetric data set. So it's a continuous 3D volumetric data set, and it flies about 3.5 meters above the seafloor, and it's collecting a swath of data about 5 meters wide, penetrating the subseabed, depending on the complexity of that seabed, anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes 8 meters, particularly if we're in the softer, more transparent sands of areas off the Netherlands and in northern Germany. We've got there you're seeing on the left-hand side what the actual head of the antenna looks like. We've got a 40-channel hydrophone array. We've got 3 high-frequency chirps, and we also have carry an INS ICSI fins to ensure we know where we are at any particular point in time. One thing that we have found over the years of working with the sub-bottom imager, we were launched into the oil and gas sector by Statoil, or by now Equinor, on these large work class ROVs, but certainly as our applications matured from the oil and gas sector into the renewable energy sector, into shallower waters, we experimented on different platforms. And there you're seeing on the left-hand corner, for very shallow waters, less than 10 meters of water, we now interface that head and interface it onto a trailing arm, or now that we've rebranded into our GeoArm deployment. The industry was really driving us hard to get it to collect data faster. And so we worked with IVA out of Denmark, and we took an their existing ScanFish system, and we actually scaled it up to incorporate our sensors within that and created a towed vehicle. And the value that this towed vehicle brings to the table, or brings to the industry, is that it can operate on a smaller vessel. We're eliminating, of course, an ROV, which with it brings a team of 6 people. So we're reducing that team down to two pilots to operate the sea kite on a 24/7 operation. And most importantly, we're able to collect data up to 3 to 4 knots. The system, as you can see, is a relatively large piece of equipment. We like it because it's very stable in the water column, and it also gives us an opportunity to interface other sensors on the sea kite. So now we're actually collecting. We're able to tow magnetometers off the sea kite. So on one survey pass, we're able to collect our 3D volumetric acoustic data set as well as magnetometer data set. So we're eliminating that that positional error that is certainly an Achilles heel of survey. On the top right hand side here, you see we've got the aileron tracked ROV. So we've developed that together with our partners just north of Aberdeen, the Aileron team. This is ideal for areas where there is high current, where you have relatively flat seabed, and the other positive thing about the tracked ROV is that we can actually deploy it right from the beach. So given the scope of work, we can eliminate the requirement for a vessel as well. The sub-bottom imager, when we're on board the vessel, we have a number of different ways that we actually can view the data. There on the left-hand side, you're seeing our data being viewed in that 3D volumetric data set. And this is ideal for looking at when we're looking for discrete anomalies, and when we're trying to interrogate that volume of data to get a better sense and identifying the targets within that data set. But when we're actually on survey mode, we actually use the right-hand side, where we're actually on the pilot console, we can actually view the data in 3 different views. So on the left-hand side here on this 3 view, we're seeing a plan view. On the right-hand upper view, we're actually seeing a cross-sectional view, where that first reflection is the seafloor, and that dot coming out of the screen is actually the cable or the pipeline. And then we can also view it on a continuous longitudinal profile view. The real edge to our technology, particularly for depth of burial surveys, UXO surveys, is that it's real-time data imaging. And we're delivering particularly for depth of burial surveys, for cables, we're able to deliver that data real-time on board the vessel, and provide that information, that valuable information to the client before we demobilize. When we're talking about cables, it provides a lot of flexibility with regards to when you can actually survey a vessel, a cable, because we don't require a tone on the cable, because we're actually measuring acoustic intensities. We're not measuring the energy passing through the cable, or the magnetic or ferrous content of the pipeline or the anomaly. And also, it's our depth of penetration. We're able to, particularly in the softer sediments, we're able to actually penetrate up to 8 to 10 meters, particularly in the softer, more transparent sediments. Like I said, off of in the Netherlands and north of Germany, where you're seeing a lot of undulating seafloor, where these cables. And where these cables can be very deep because of the undulating seafloor. This is a typical example. I'm going to show you this video here of what our data looks like in that volumetric data set, and how we actually start our survey, collecting this volume of data. There we can actually slice down into that data set, whether it's on an X, Y, Z plane. We can slice down every 5 centimeters and interrogate that data set, and can rotate it on its axes. So here you're seeing that first reflection is the seafloor, and that linear feature that is beneath there is actually the cable. And then we actually will pick that cable. We've been we have in the past been hand picking that cable, but now we're developing an algorithm that we're introducing to the industry this year, where we'll be auto picking, and once again being able to remove the numbers of folks that we currently have on the vessel, to ultimately actually being able to reduce the number of folks on board the vessel to only 2 persons. So once again, you can see how we can actually rotate that data set and get a sense of where that cable or where those discrete anomalies are in that volume. Of course, having confidence in interpretation is really important, and that's where we use a combination of these different viewers. So here is a cross-sectional view of that volumetric data set, and when we first look at that, you see a lot of bright spots, and with an untrained eye, it's difficult to really get an understanding. Well, how do we know where the cable is? How do we know if it's not a discrete anomaly such as a boulder or UXO? Where is that trench, the side of the trench? And it's only through actually visualizing, viewing a number of different views that we truly get that confidence. So here we're showing that cross-track profile view. And there, this is a top-down view. So as we slice down every 5 centimeters in that data set, you're actually seeing in that top-down view how we're actually now seeing that reflection from the coarse trench come into view. As we continue to slice down, there we're seeing that linear feature going through, and that actually is indicative of the cable. And then this next anomaly is actually a discrete anomaly, which is a boulder, or in some instances that's that we would depending on the shape and the scope of work that we've been assigned to do, we would also be able to identify if this is a UXO. And we can also then bring to the screen the longitudinal profile view. We first got involved and introduced to the UXO surveys with EDF Blythe, and this was actually they were interested in ferrous UXOs. They had an existing historical magnetometer survey collected, and they brought us to the table because there were over 140 magnetometer targets that they had identified. They had very limited time that they actually they had in hand before they could bring in the installation vessel. So they asked if we could come in and actually validate the magnetometer data. And so we did so. We actually brought our SBI to the table. We went over the magnetometer survey, similar to how you would do in a lawnmower type of manner at 4.5 meter survey lines, and we actually were able to validate the magnetometer targets, and we reduced the number of targets from 140 down to some 19 that we correlated with magnetic anomalies. So we provided an image. So by wrapping that somewhat of acoustic boundary around the anomaly, we're able to provide confidence that of the size and the shape and the location and the depth of burial of that anomaly, and it allowed the EOD consultants to reduce the list from 140 down to 19. So that was a significant value proposition that we brought to the table. And there you're seeing actually this would be indicative of the type of anomaly that we would consider to be a high risk for being a UXO. In this instance, all of the 19 targets that we identified were metal debris or boulders of shapes of the indicative of the UXOs that they were looking at the area. Though certainly we went forward then and continued on working with the industry, particularly with the Danish Navy. So here we're showing you a couple of the of examples that we had with the Danish Navy. This is a 500 pound aerial bomb. From a perspective how we reporting, there you're seeing that we provide the ID of the anomaly, the coordinate system, the east and northing, the depth of burial, and the size, the indicative size, and provide some interpretation of what that anomaly could be. There you're seeing a plan view of it, there in the plan view. We knew that there were UXOs indicative of these aerial bombs that could possibly be in the area. So we knew beforehand the length and width ratio. So when our geophysicists are on board, they're looking for that length to width ratio to reduce and identify these UXOs. And Alison will now go through in a few more slides how we actually do that. We also here you're seeing an elephant bomb that was actually deburied. This was it when it was partially deburied. There you're seeing its nose was down in the subsea bed. This particular anomaly was actually buried down to about 3.2 meters in the subsea bed, and we were able to image its body, as well as actually here is a plan view of the fins. This is a plan view that shows these fins through our data set. We have our accuracy is quite high with regards to our ability to image the length, width, and depth of burial. This is a histogram that shows that compares the interpreted versus the object found. This was from the work that we did with the Danish Navy, and so we're within 10% in this particular survey with regards to our length, our width, and depth of burial. We went on working with Tennant on the Borsell project. Now, this was a non-ferrous survey. So when we say non-ferrous, they were looking for these what they call the LMB mines. These are the Luft air launched mines that they were using towards the latter part of the war, where they were made of aluminum. Very difficult to detect, of course, with a magnetometer survey, where the majority of the mine is made of non-ferrous material. The parachute lug, however, is one area that does have a small percentage of ferrous, which can possibly be picked up with a magnetometer, but in many instances, very, very difficult to detect these Luft mines. We were very pleased when we actually identified this particular anomaly. When we actually first looked at the data set, we found a single target, which we recognized was a very strong reflection, and we flagged it as a high risk target. But actually, when we went in to interrogate it, and when the survey contractor and EOD operator went in and actually deburied it, we found it to indeed be an LMB mine. And what we were actually imaging in our data set was the insides of the mine. So we were actually imaging the charge, the trigger and battery unit, as well as a parachute lug. And one of the reasons certainly that we were able we were not imaging the aluminum shell was because it was encrusted in a lot of biological matter, so it was transparent to our acoustics, and our signals were transmitted through the casing, and we were actually seeing the insides of that unit. So going forward, we identified this as a fingerprint, really, of an LMB mine, at least one of the fingerprints that we added to our library. And moving forward now, we're looking at developing algorithms to auto detect these types of fingerprints and others that we have collected over the past few years. Certainly with, UXO surveys, we've been very successful in depth of burial surveys on cables. UXO surveys certainly introduce additional challenges to our approach and to our methodology. So we sat back over just in the fall of this year and looked at what ways we could actually enhance our software to improve our detection and our imaging of UXOs, both ferrous and non-ferrous. Keeping in mind that UXO surveys we're all pioneering this, and this scope of work and this industry has only been around for a number of years, given the fact that UXOs have only been brought to the table or brought to light as a result of the offshore wind farms and the concentration of installations in the areas that these farms are being installed. So I'd like to pass over next few slides to Alison to talk a little bit about what these software enhancements are.
Sure. So, can we go back to the presentation? Sorry, just for a moment. Thank you. So this first slide is a screen capture of our new pilot console. So this is the software that we use for live visualization of our data. So as we're collecting the data, the image sort of streams by here on the top-down view, which is on the right. So this is an example of a cable survey. So you can see that the cable is visible in the top portion of the right-hand image, but it's not visible in the lower portion. And in this case, that's because the cable actually is dipping through the seabed somewhat. So it'll be visible on a lower slice. So one of the things that we wanted to do to make it easier to visualize the data and to identify objects within the data was to create a transparency view. So if you go to the next slide, Moya, you can see the transparency view that we've created. So with this visualization, we've just hidden the voxels that have a low intensity, and we've kept the ones that have high intensity. So in this case, that would indicate the cable. So you can now see the cable running through the entire data set. So this is something that we've created to make things easier for visualization of the data, but we've also enhanced our processing of the data as well. On the next slide, we've brought in the use of a program called ZoomSpace, which is it's an advanced seismic processing suite. So this is an example of, excuse me, some early sea kite data. So we were flying very fast at this time, which faster than we would now. So we know now that flying at these speeds creates noise in the data due to just the speed through the water. And this is manifested in the data as ringiness in the seabed. We've got a very strong presence of the multiple. The cable and the stratigraphy are present and still visible, but we would prefer that they're enhanced. So we took this data to ZoomSpace to see how we could improve the visualization. So the seafloor and the multiple have now been suppressed through use of this advanced post-processing, and the cable and the stratigraphy are enhanced. So we'll go now to my screen, please. I'll show you an example of a live data demonstration. So this is the data viewed in Navi model. This is one section of cable data. So we'll go now to a slice through that data. You can see the cable throughout that section. So as we move along and I slice down through the data, the cable becomes apparent. And you can look at it in the profile view as well. So I've also got an example of some UXO data, which I will jump to because I think we've got quite a few questions, so I don't want to spend too long looking at this. So I'll jump to some UXO data quickly. So this is an example of a small-scale UXO survey that we did over a relatively small area over a known magnetometer target. So in this case, I think we had a 10 by 10 meter box, just a small area in the center, and which we covered by capturing 3 parallel lines. So we'll look now at the center line. So as we're interrogating this data, we would start by moving our slice up into the water column and then slicing down in 10 centimeter increments until we see an object of interest. So this red that you can see appearing is the seabed. So I'm slicing down through the seabed and now down into the subseabed, keeping an eye for a particularly strong anomaly. So we've got one here of interest. So as I'm interrogating this, I would just drop a waypoint down onto this area for further investigation. And then I would continue to slice through the data looking for other anomalies. One of the ways that we improve our confidence in the result of the data is the way that we look at the way that the anomaly appears on overlapping lines. So this is a line that overlaps the area of interest, and you can see that there is a response in the general area of the waypoint right about here. So that gives me a really good confidence that this anomaly is not an artifact and that it is caused by a real solid object buried in the subsea bed. So being satisfied of that, I would go ahead and re-render the data at 5 centimeter resolution to give us a better look at the image itself. So this is that 5 centimeter resolution data in the area of interest. So here we have our anomaly. So now I would move to measuring the anomaly, the size dimensions of the anomaly, which I would just do using the measurement tool straight from here. So we're using a color scale which is representative of the overall area. So it's a color scale that allows us to see the characteristics of the surrounding seabed. And using this color scale, the anomaly has a length of 1.33 meters. And then I could measure the width as well. And then I would also use what we call the 6 dB contour. So we take a, okay, we've got a lot of questions coming in apparently. So we take a contour around the anomaly of 6 dB. So I've now got a color scale that's approximately 6 dB in length. I'm going to find the peak intensity of about 28 dB. So now I'm looking at a contour of 22 dB, which is 6 dB down from the peak intensity. So all of this colored area is the 6 dB contour, and I would measure that as well. And we would use both of those measurements. And what that does is it helps us quantify the way that the intensity is falling off from the peak. And we look at the sort of the difference between those measurements, and we can see, is this a very strong concentrated anomaly, or is it more of a dispersed and a dispersed anomaly? And so that would influence our interpretation of that anomaly. So this anomaly in particular was a mine. I think it was a German BM1000 mine. That's all I've got for the demonstration, Moya. Do you want to go back to the slides?
Well, I'm finish the slide.
Sure.
And I think since we want to take, do we have a few minutes there to take some of these questions and then deal with the rest in the chat room?
Yeah, we've got some feedback for you. Better now?
Yes, better now.
Okay, great. I would, there's a lot of engagement for you guys, but we're running so far behind schedule that I think the best thing to do would be to jump into the Discord chat room. There's a way to chat live there with voice, not just with text.
Okay.
So maybe a good solution would be that as soon as we're done here, those people who have questions for Moya and for PanGeo can meet up there, and you can have a Q&A using live voice, even without the video, unfortunately. That'd be okay, guys.
Yeah, and when will that happen?
Right, as soon as we're done with this event.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, ladies. I really appreciate your presentation today and showing that. And as I said, you have lots of questions waiting for you, so you get a chance to go in there and have a look at them and prepare some answers and to meet your audience in Discord.
Great, well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Moya. Okay. Oh no. Just as I was about to add Erlend in, he disappeared. Maybe we should take a question after all, Moya.
Okay. Are there any plans to develop a smaller, lighter SBI unit for AUV mobilization? Absolutely. You know, when we started off in this marketplace, you know, in the oil and gas sector, you know, we had a payload of, you know, ROVs, work-class ROVs were, I like to say, a dime a dozen, but payload and costs weren't what was driving everything. We had a payload of 750 kilos. Today, that same payload is now 250 kilo, and we're working now on a design that'll get it to sub 125. We have designs on the table to actually interface it onto an AUV. We're working with a number of providers in the industry to do just that. We've got a very large and active innovation R&D program now ongoing within the company to interface that and have that ready within the next 10 to 12 months. We're also working on interfacing the SBI onto an unmanned surface vehicle, and so we're hoping to be able to offer these types of options for platforms within the next within that timeline of 10 to 12 months. Does the system need to be calibrated on a project-by-project basis based on the targets? And Alison, do you want to take that one?
She left the room, I'm afraid.
Oh, how dare she? Okay.
You're all in the room on this.
Yes, no problem. I'll leave that one. Plans to improve noise on the first 0.5 to 1 meter burial. You know, we a number of years ago, before we introduced before we were actually our pilot console was resolving or was processing data or viewing data in 15 centimeter voxels. In August of 2017, we introduced a new pilot console that allowed us to resolve data at 10 centimeter voxels real time, and so that really helped with regards to our ability to view the data or to image data within the first 30 centimeters, because we did originally have issues in that top layer of the seabed. And now with our latest pilot console, as well as with the Zoom space data post-processing, we're able to now eliminate that challenging area within the from the seafloor within the first 20 to 30 centimeters. If you're going to reduce the number of people on board to 2, how will the increased resolution processing be handled whilst keeping a 12-hour day? Yes, we will. We wouldn't be processing that. We would be collecting the data offshore, but we would be streaming it, taking the raw data from the vessel and bringing it to shore to actually do all of the processing and delivering the answer product to the client. So the only thing we would be doing on the vessel would be data acquisition and QCing the data. Actually, not even, we can QC the data real time off the vessel, actually. So it would be a combination or a balance depending on what the client's looking for with regards to their need to have that data delivered on board the vessel or processed on board the vessel.
Okay, thank you very much, Moya, for being a good sport and reading out some questions.
No problem.
Poor Erlend, who has been so patient for hours, just seems to be having trouble after trouble to get in again. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to skip straight to the AGM, and that'll buy him 5 minutes and see if he can get back in with a stable connection. Because I know a lot of you have been waiting patiently to hear about Geodata and how they are working on mapping COVID-19. But thanks again, Moya, very much. You and Alison did a great job, and please join us in the Discord chat room.
Yeah, we will, and I'll get Alison to respond to that other question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, guys. Okay, so I'm going to hope that one of my other committee members joins me here, but If not, and in the meantime, I'm going to just go ahead and proceed and power on through the AGM. For those of you who are willing to join me for that, it's very appreciated. There is a delay of 10-15 seconds between what I say here and what you see in the YouTube stream. So if there are objections or comments to the AGM, they can be a little bit difficult to capture. So in fact, maybe it works better to do them after, to take questions following Alan's presentation. Anyway, there comes John. Can I add you in, John?
Yep. Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so this is special for us. We've never had an online AGM before, but I promise that I will do my best to be fast and efficient with it. We will just have to see how it goes. So the AGM has an agenda that hopefully was already distributed to all of you, that you should have received by email a few weeks ago. The agenda did not receive any comments or suggestions from our members, so therefore we are proceeding with it as planned. I provide an opening. We elect an AGM chairman and note taker, which in this case is quite difficult to elect anybody other than me. So sorry if you were planning to object to that. I'm going to give a quick rundown of the annual report. Again, this was sent to everybody by email a few weeks ago. Settle members' fee, discuss the budget, and elect the board and chairman. The annual report, I'm pleased to say that in 2019, we had 21 sponsors, which has gone up quite significantly to 29 sponsors so far in 2020. So we're on a positive trajectory, which is great. John, I keep muting you on purpose because there's noise in the background. We raised a total of 238,000 NOK in 2019, and 80% of this went straight into our events. The remaining 20% is used for administrative costs. The majority of that, again, is straight into accounting because it costs quite a bit for us to have external eyes on our money. The board itself, including myself and John, who are joining you today, have no remuneration for our efforts. We are volunteers. I wanted to just show two quick graphs because they tell a story I want to tell. NOSP was established in 2012 with 35 people and no sponsors. And in 2013, we still had no sponsors. And then we started requesting support so that we didn't have to take money at the door from attendees to cover the cost of food and location rentals and so on. And ever since then, we have had a healthy budget thanks to the generous sponsorship of many great companies. And we see increase both in the number of companies who are willing to join us, and of course in our overall membership numbers. These are people on our mailing list. We have 53 people who haven't yet lost interest in the live stream, which is good news, and is pretty representative of our events. We tend to have around 50, 60 people isn't completely unusual, and in fact we've had some that have been over 80. These are the great sponsors that we have for this year. This is not the 2019 list. This is the 2020 list because I just wanted to point out how grateful we are to have you. You know, we promised we would do 7 events this year, and we're trying our best to do 7 events even under these rather difficult circumstances that we're all in. So I do hope that you have all experienced the chat room as being a positive addition to the live stream so that we can have a bit of dialogue and hopefully meet and chat a bit with our colleagues. In 2019, we had 7 events. 3 of them included live equipment demos, which was absolutely fantastic. In fact, at the annual dinner, Teledyne brought a big hunking something or other to show us and installed it in the foyer of the museum in Stavanger, which was absolutely fantastic. 3 of our events had more than 80 people in attendance. And in the 7 events that we held, we had 27 total presentations, which were by 23 separate companies and 4 separate universities. So we had no duplicates being represented on our agenda last year, which was absolutely super. And again, thanks to the generous support of our corporate sponsors, all of our events are free to attend. The financials for 2019 are such that we had a whopping profit of 5,637 crowns. The bank balance at the end of the year was 175,000 and change. The balance was down 24,000, even though we had an operating profit last year, mostly due to the fact that we had to write off some sponsorships that just we've been carrying with us for years on end, and have just never had the money come in. So that's a plea to those of you who have received an invoice from us and not paid your invoice. Please do pay it because we can't do what we do unless you pay your bill. And eventually we have to write it off, obviously. The budget was distributed together with the AGM documentation a few weeks ago. The financial forecast for 2020 is a loss of 52,000. However, don't get too worried about that, I hope. One thing is that we made a contribution to get kids into survey to make hydrographic survey posters. We printed 3,000 of them in 2019. The bill arrived on our desk in 2020. So 71,000 of that loss actually is coming from the printing of those great posters. The other thing is that not just almost, identical to our loss is a planned hurrah at the annual dinner where there's a potential 52,000 crowns that could be cut. So basically we're saying if it looks like the 2021 season is going to be bad, if it looks like companies are still struggling, that we're not going to be able to get the sponsorship that we need to continue in our extravagant lifestyles, then we can cut 52,000 from the annual dinner budget and still end up breaking even this year. So I request your support as members for the fact that we are prognosing a loss this year. The other thing just to keep in mind is that we really have no idea about our upcoming events. If we hold them in person, they cost a lot more than if we hold them online. So it's really quite difficult for us to make an estimate right now for what's going to happen with the rest of the year. So our guiding principles are that we promise 7 events this year and we plan to deliver on that. We try to break even, but we have no need to carry the large bank balance that we currently have. 175,000 in the bank is rather unnecessary for us, which is why I personally think it's okay that we go for a loss and eat a little bit out of that in order to provide a good party for everybody at the end of the year. We would like to give back to the community by sponsoring young people's attendance at our events. That goes into the annual dinner that we would like to offer travel expenses to under 30s to get more people to be able to join us. We'd like to visit universities, but of course, nobody wants to shake hands these days, so we're putting that off for a bit. And by sponsoring organizations like Get Kids Into Survey, which is what we did last year in the printing of the hydrographic survey posters for children. And the final point there, as I already mentioned, if our sponsorship prognosis for 2021 looks poor, it's quite easy for us to make last-minute adjustments to our annual budget here by cutting out a keynote speech, by not providing the travel expenses, for instance, to the young people, and so on. So I think we can handle with it, and I appreciate all of your support as members. So. The voting that is required is that we propose and would like to have carried a membership fee of nothing. All in favor? John? John and I are in favor. I see Erlend is back online, which is great news. So I think we're going to jump to Erlend's. Anybody who has objections to these votes has then the length of time that Erlend is speaking in order to raise objections in the Discord channel. Otherwise, we will wait until then and say that everything has been carried with approval. Oh no, Erlend disappeared again. Oh, he's back. Okay. So I ask for approval of the 2020 budget as distributed to members on the 8th of April. My friend John? Yep. And I propose the following board and chairman, which is the same as we have had in the past year. We had no new volunteers for this year. I would like to encourage anybody who's interested in joining our board for 2021. We definitely need you. There are a few people, I think, who can imagine and see themselves moving on after many years of service to this great organization of NOSP. That is the conclusion of the slides that I have. John, do you have anything you would like to add? Oh, now you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think you said it all, Celina. Like I said, I'd just like to reiterate our thanks to our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't do these events. We do set a big price on their involvement in NOSP. Thank you.
Okay, Great, thanks. Okay, Erlend, what do you think? Should we give it a try? And if it fails, then it fails. I'm going to try to add you in, Erlend, and just see what happens.
All right.
I can see you.
Cool.
What do you think? Can we just see what happens?
Sorry?
We'll give it a go and we'll see what happens, yeah?
Yeah, let's try.
Let's try.
I can't promise anything.
Nope.
So, all right.
All right, I'll jump in if I see that there's a problem, okay?
All right.
Best of luck, Erlend.
And make informed decisions. So as many of you probably know here, ArcGIS technology is widely used across many industries, including governmental organizations and health organizations. So even though I work with petroleum and subsea, it's been quite interesting to see all the applications and visualizations which have appeared in the media around COVID-19 and how it's often focused around location. I really think that the real-time maps with statistics have really delivered a global awareness around this whole situation. So using map in GIS in epidemiology is really not a new thing. Some of you might recognize this map in the background here, which is John Snow's famous map from the cholera outbreak in London in 1854. So he mapped out the location of each death, which are the black bars that you see here. By analyzing the trend in the map, he was able to locate the source of the outbreak, which was this water pump here in Broad Street. Unfortunately for us, we're not dealing with a single stationary source this time. We have an increasing number of sources and they're all moving around, hopefully less now than before. But this makes GIS and location intelligence even more important tool to help implement the necessary measures and the appropriate scale at the appropriate scale to reduce COVID-19 transmission and economic, public, and social impacts. So first, I'm going to give you a quick overview of how GIS is being used to fight COVID-19 today, and I'll go more into details with some demos afterwards. So the first thing you need to consider is to look at the demographics. So COVID-19 disproportionately impacts certain demographics, such as the elderly and those with underlying health conditions. So mapping social vulnerability, age, and other factors help you monitor the most at-risk groups in certain regions. So then time-enabled maps can really reveal how infection spreads over time and where you may want to target interventions. And then a really interesting one is the mobility part, where modelers are using aggregated anonymous mobility data such as cell phones based on actual movement of people to better gauge areas of high versus low social contact. Then, of course, hospital capacity. Comparing the peak of the disease spread to hospital capacity helps local authorities determine when more hospital beds and personnel may be needed and plan ahead to meet spikes in demands. And then to identify sites, you can use facility location modeling, which is used to evaluate a set of candidate sites at different locations and with varying characteristics, and determine the optimal candidate sites to put into service to address demands. And then, of course, to communicate and engage with the community. The use of interactive web maps, dashboards, apps, and story maps helps to rapidly communicate the current situation to stakeholders and the public. The Johns Hopkins dashboard that you see here is a great example of this. I guess many of you have seen this already. It's able to convey complex information in an easy to and understandable manner. And the fact that it's near real time makes people go back to this application and look over it to see changes and so on. So as a side note, this technology behind this dashboard is actually the same as you see in many common operating pictures applications for offshore operations. The one in the picture here shows AIS feed, weather, airplanes, platform locations, and it has geofencing with alerts around certain areas and so on. So this is a well-known technology that's being used for a lot of different things in many industries. So I wanted to go back to this Johns Hopkins dashboard just to show you a few more things that you might have not seen yet, and just show you how much information you can actually find when you start to drill down in the dashboard here. So this is a while back they made a dashboard of the US, which has data down to county level. So you can see here they've mapped out confirmed cases by population, death, fatality rates, and so on. So if I look at deaths, for instance, hoping that my internet connection stays with me. Let's see. I'll try to click on a county here. And you see it comes up with an infographic for that specific county here. So what I can do then is if I click this infographic, it should provide me more information about the demographic. So again, my connection here is a bit slow. Seems to be loading. Everybody's waiting patiently, hopefully. Yeah, this seems to be a bit slow. I can try to come back to this at a later stage. So what you can see here in the infographic is that it has a direct link to the demographics in the in that specific county. So you can look at ethnicity, poverty, the insurance of the people in there, fatality rate compared to the state of the county, and so on. So you can really drill down and find the information for each county. So it's really powerful tool. So then I'll move on to a little bit in Geodata doing. one challenge some places here in Norway has been that there has been we haven't been affected that hard by COVID-19 as other countries, but there's been an increase in ambulance trips, especially in rural areas, to people who are infected or thought to be infected by COVID-19. So they have to make these ambulance trips to test these people and so on. And due to the precautions they have to take in these cases, like disinfecting the whole ambulance and so on, the capacity for handling normal patients was significantly reduced. So as a result of this, the Norwegian Public Health Service have developed a mathematical model describing the geographical spread of COVID-19 in Norway. So this model is based on a SIR model, SIR, which is a well-known model within epidemiology. In addition to this, they've taken mobility data into account. So they use cell phone movement between municipalities, and based on the calculation, they can better predict the spread and hospitalization rate and scale up accordingly. So I'll try to launch this application here. And we'll see what happens. Loading. So unfortunately, this is all in Norwegian. So for you people over in the UK, it's probably a bit hard to understand. I'll try to try some of the stuff that's on here. And maybe I can jump out of full screen mode and just show you pictures first here. Or maybe not. Yeah, so the map is loading in the background here. So I'll explain the numbers here first. So these are the date here up in the right corner is today's date. And these are the actual number of hospitalized people. And then if I look at this yellow box here, I can see earlier today that this was the new model was run on the 20th of April. And so the model and the prognosis is based on April 20th. So at that time, the prognosis today was that there was going to be 129 hospitalized, and where 80 was in normal sort of hospital beds, and 50 people were in intensive care. There is an upper and lower uncertainty in these numbers based on this model. So you can see here, this is for the intensive care, this is normal hospital beds, and this is the prognosis. And down here you can see the graph for the trend up until May 13. So I can make this a bit bigger so we can take a look at this graph. So what you see here is the, there we go. So the yellow line here is the prediction or the forecast of total hospitalized people. And then you have the white line here, which is the actual hospitalized people. And then you have the uncertainty, which is the purple here, and the blue line. The uncertainty. And these green and red is the normal beds and the intensive care beds. So you can go in here and see the trend, and it follows the the predictions quite good here. So that's for the whole of Norway. So if I wanted to say check for a certain day, I want to see close to 17th of May. You know, the people who've been in Norway know that that's a very special day here in Norway. So I want to look at, say, 10th of May. And the prognosis says that there are going to be 65 people in the hospital, where 24 are in intensive care. And change it back to today. Now I can start looking at the different hospitals or hospital regions here in Norway. So if I look first at Akershus, it zooms in on that location. I can see there are 5,000 people who belongs in that region. There are 16 people that has been hospitalized. I can look at the municipality in each, or all the municipalities in that region, to look at how many people who have been hospitalized in that region. Luckily, there's not big numbers here in Norway, so then I can look at the graph for that specific region. So you can see that it was actually above the predictions, but it's moving under the predictions now the last few days. And then I can look at Stavanger, for instance. They only have one, and they're well below the forecast. And here I can also look at click on each individual municipality and look at total number of people. I can look at these are predictions for different R values. So I think right now in Norway it's 0.8 or something, but they've calculated based on the normal R values, so 1.1, 1.3, 1.5. So that would mean that normally it would be with 1.5, there would be 235 infected now and 99 sick, and 2 people in the hospital in intensive care, I think. We can move up to let's see, this area, Møre og Romsdal. And you can see that they're actually above the forecast. And in this area, we actually have data from all the ambulance trips as well. So here you can see the number of ambulance trips they've had since the beginning of March. So it's steadily increasing. And these are not regular ambulance trips. These are sort of COVID-19 trips. So it's increasing slowly still. And these are large areas with not a lot of ambulances. So they need to plan accordingly to actually to make sure that they have the best performance that they can have in these areas. So I think that was what I was going to show you on that application here. So I have just a few more, if this loads now, a few more examples that I can show you of just nice conversations of what I'm probably challenging my internet connection here now.
Looks like you're kind of falling in and out, Erlend.
Let's try.
Can I ask you a question? Will you work on loading that?
Yeah, it's loading slowly, so I don't know if we'll bother to I can send the links in the chats instead,
Yeah.
maybe on Discord. So there's one nice 3D visualization of spatial tempers. One here where they actually map with the sidewalks. Social distancing, you can find the actual sidewalks in New York who are better for social distancing than others. So sorry about the internet connection. Hopefully I was able to show some of the stuff that's going on. But yeah, I was a bit unlucky with my both computer and the internet connection today, I think.
Oh, that's the way it is in this all virtual world that we're living in. Do you want to keep giving it a go, Erlend, or it looks like you're frozen now? Well, okay, I'm going to give myself a high five on behalf of Erlend and thank him for his talk this evening. Thank you, everybody, so much. There have come no objections into the chat room for the annual general meeting. Therefore, I carry the motions that were presented there together with the budget for 2020. And look forward to hopefully holding some physical gatherings in the near future. But if not, then leave a message, please, on the Discord channel for us about what you think, any feedback. I think we're aware of some glitches, but we feel to give us some lessons learned from your end, from those of you who have been watching the YouTube link. We're keen to know what we can do to be better in the future. So thank you again very much to our corporate sponsors who make this possible, to the NOSP board, to the Hydrographic Society in Scotland for co-hosting this with us. It's been a pleasure to spend this sunny Bergen evening together with you, and I wish you all the best. Stay home and wash your hands and do everything that the government tells you to do because they know best. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.